Hello everyone and welcome along to this week's edition of The Verdict, where David Cleary and myself will be looking at the best of the first week of 2018. And David, it's fair to say that the majority of what we're going to be looking at over the next hour is from Sandown, but there is plenty to look at.
Well, yes, there's some good racing from Sandown on Saturday, testing conditions but competitive in the main, and some horses that are going to be of interest going forward into the spring. We've got some racing from Ludlow earlier in the week, which was quite a competitive card at a slightly lower level, and we'll also look back at the bumper from Cheltenham, listed 4-year-old bumper that we didn't have a chance to look at in last week's Verdict.
Indeed, Cheltenham from New Year's Day, Ludlow from Wednesday, but first up, David, we're going to go to Saturday at Sandown, and you have put together a split screen for us here. On the top here we've got the Grade 1 feature of the day, the 32 red Tolworth Hurdle, and over the same track and trip the concluding 2-mile handicap hurdle won by Call Me Lord. Just tell us about why we've got this.
I think they're lined up as best we can line them up. It's not like the flat where you can line them up precisely, so it's just to demonstrate the pace that they went in the Tolworth, the race at the top, and the way that they sustained that pace, and to perhaps give an indication of the depth of form that the Tolworth represents, even though there were only the 5 runners. The race at the bottom, it wasn't the deepest of handicap hurdles, but there was a horse in it, in Our Merlin, the horse in the red colours with the grey cap, who came into it in very good form, and he was beaten by the horse in green behind him at this stage, Call Me Lord, who'd been very impressive here in the spring. Now, watching them, they're coming up to passing the post first time. There's not much between the two races at this stage, but from now, Mont des Avalois, the horse who's leading in the Tolworth, is going to be pressing on.
How key was his role, before we talk about any of the principles in the Tolworth, how key was his role? I think he's run a very good race anyway, but from the front, how key was his role in the narrative of the race?
Well, he's demonstrated, he's ensured that it was a properly run race, which the horses involved by and large hadn't run in properly run races thus far over hurdles. They've mostly been running in small field novices, pottering round. Kalashnikov, the horse in the yellow and purple colours on the inside, Western Rider, the horse at the back who'd been in the frame in the bumpers at Cheltenham and Aintree last year, the horse in the orange, and Summerville Boy, who'd run well behind Close House at Cheltenham on his penultimate start. He's the horse in the pale blue colours.
He was a maiden coming into this over hurdles. For all that you said, he'd run well over hurdles behind Slate House at Cheltenham, and that stamina test, also behind Western Rider when it was less of a stamina test the time before where they dawdled. How much more suited have we seen him, do you see what I mean, in these set of circumstances where it was a generous gallop?
Well, I think he just looked a different proposition. He's coped really well. In contrast, the Russian Doyen, the other horse in the race, is beginning to drop out as they run towards 3 from home. Western Rider has moved up smoothly on the inside, but when the taps are turned in the home straight, he backs out of things. You can see now, jumping 3 out, that the runners in the Tolworth, they've been getting a move on down the back straight, and they've gone some way ahead of the race at the bottom. They're turning now out of the back straight. Kalashnikov still off the bridle. He was off the bridle all the way, really, and he sticks to his task really well. By contrast, the winner, Summerville Boy, travels much better into this race, and as they're turning for home, Mont des Avalois is still going strongly. Looking at these two races as we are now, as they've turned for home there in the Tolworth, and they're about to do so in the handicap hurdle, Clayton up front there, Briari, Memento, and the eventual winner just out of shot there. You've got Summerville Boy on the top end, is about to really kick in with that stamina. Just with both of these races in isolation, before we talk about the horses specifically, are you sort of favourable towards both of them, thinking they were good renewals of both races? I think you can take a positive view of the form of the first 3 horses in the handicap hurdle, and you can, because of the time of the race and the way in which it was run, I think you've got to take a positive view of the Tolworth. Summerville Boy has taken over, he bungles the last, that gives Kalashnikov a chance, I will say it right eventually, but Summerville Boy, he picks up again when Kalashnikov comes at him, and he does it really well, and I really like that performance. And this is a race with a very strong pedigree, so we'll have another look now that they've finished in both races.
Yeah, let's call up the Summerville Boy race on its own. So you've got your winner there, you've got your second, Mondesavois as well. Western Rider, we'll talk about him as a bit of a disappointment, but as I said, he was a 0 from 3 maiden over hurdles. Going forward, do you think we're going to be seeing much more of this horse at 2 miles? Because he's obviously got plenty of talent, but he stays well, Summerville Boy. Well,
it's a strong test at 2 miles, this, but he does pick up really well behind a horse who clearly does look to be a 2 miler, Mondesavois, at this stage. I think if Mondesavois had jumped 2 out better, and jumping was his Achilles heel on Saturday, then he might have finished the race better, but he probably wouldn't have finished it as strongly as the 2 that beat him. I mean, I think Summerville Boy, whether they go Supreme route or whether they go up to the Bearing Bingham, the Ballymore, I think he's a serious contender for both those races, really, and he shouldn't be underestimated. Kalashnikov, I think, will be going up to 2.5. They've said that's the plan with him, and that's likely to be his next race.
Let's take in the head on again. I thought Kalashnikov ran a good, but I think there's plenty of these for different reasons and ways. I think the first 3 home you'd be quite favourable of, because this horse, Mondesavois, has shown plenty of talent and exuberance from the front, for all that he did make that mistake 2 out. Kalashnikov on this ground, he'd be just better going forward on better ground in the spring, and this horse has shown what he can do altogether.
Yes, I mean, Mondesavois, I mean, he's going to be a smashing novice chaser this time next year.
He's a full brother to Le Preziel, of course.
He is, and he's got the physique for it, and his style of racing lends itself more to chasing. Summerville Boy, there's greenness, you can see the greenness in him here, going to the front. He's never won a race over hurdles, but he comes there, he bungles the last, but the way that he picks up when Kalashnikov closes on him, I think is very taking. And as I've said, the time of the race is really good, and that would encourage me to think that this is up to the standard of race that we've seen from in recent years, from Finian's Oscar winning the race. L'Ami Serge won it
3 years ago,
and in between. Yes, exactly.
Just this horse though, Western Rider. Let's just talk about him, because he was a very good bumper horse, of course, and was ahead of this horse at Cheltenham last time. Disappointing on the day. I know Warren Greatrix has said going forward now they might be looking at the Sydney Banks race that Warren Greatrix has won for the last 2 years. He just was a bit of a disappointment though on the day on this ground.
I heard the ground was blamed. I mean, that seems nonsense on his record, given what he'd done on his 2 previous starts on testing ground. But I think he just had an off day, and you look at his form in bumpers last year, when he did improve when he went on spring ground, it may well be that we'll see him much more competitive against the same horses come the spring. Right,
first race of the Cheltenham Festival, there is your betting, Supreme Novices Hurdle. Kalashnikov you've got in there, and Summerville Boy, they're both 20-1 shots. I mean, do you think come the festival these 2 will be meeting again in the same race? And if they do, it's obviously...
Well, I think that I definitely have Summerville Boy a shorter price than Kalashnikov. Okay. I know they were talking about the ground, but all through that race, I mean, you watch that race again and you look at those 2 horses and you say which horse has gone best through this race. There's no doubt that Summerville Boy has gone best, and he's beaten Kalashnikov comprehensively.
Okay, Summerville Boy there 20-1, and Kalashnikov the same price. We've got the Ballymore as well. We can just mix on there. Sam Crow on the blind side. Next Destination, who won in Ireland the other day, and in there Kalashnikov you've got 16-1, and no Summerville Boy on the list just there.
No, well, I suspect he's more likely to run in the Supreme, whereas Kalashnikov stated target is the Bearing Bingham, so you can see why he might be shorter in that race.
Let's have a look at the second of the races that we split and just flag up your winner, because I think the more you watch this race, the more impressed you can be by this horse, Call Me Lord, for various reasons. But This was just his third start in Britain, his second at Sandown. He's now 2 from 2 there. Put behind him that disappointing run at Huntingdon, but connections, or Nicky Henson certainly said, this horse is all about going right-handed. But to do what he's done here off top weight against in-form rivals, you can't help but be impressed, surely.
No, exactly. I mean, he was very good when he won here in the spring.
Yeah.
He didn't jump well that day, but the turn of foot he showed on decent ground was impressive, and the way he's picked up here is impressive, and he's jumped better on this occasion. I mean, he looks like a chaser, he travels through the race like one, but he's clearly a very high standard of handicap hurdler, and probably going to be a bit better than that. The problem is, in terms of targets, the need to go right-handed.
Come the spring with the major objectives, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yes, but you'd imagine the Imperial Cup would be an option.
Right.
Back at Sandown in March, you'd imagine he wouldn't need to improve much more to be considered for the Grade 1 2-mile hurdle at Punchestown in the spring. We weren't able to show it, but there is a race at Quinze-sur-Mer on Christmas Day 2016, which, if you've got access to the France Galop website, you can watch it on there, where he does win left-handed, and it's quite an amazing win that he has. But there's a hurdle on the bend that he has to jump, and the way that he hangs so badly is.
Does it give fuel to the fire as to why we won't be seeing it left-handed?
Definitely the reason why he's not going to run. I mean, he's just hanging right all the way through the race.
How good a chaser
could
he be long term? You mentioned it, but he's only 5. He's taken that off 11 stone 12, as I said, against the likes of Al Merlin, who really informed. Gaston Golfer usually runs a good race for all that he doesn't win often. As a chaser going forward, could you see him lining up in proper 2-mile chases one day?
Definitely. I mean, he's got the potential, if all goes well, to go to a very high level over fences.
Really impressed with Call Me Lord. That was a look at the 2-mile handicap hurdle, which concluded the day, and also the 32 red Tolworth, the Grade 1 feature at Sandown on Saturday. And that was part 1 of the verdict.